Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing that the persistent chirping outside your window isn't just a melody, but a heated argument over territory. If humans suddenly gain the ability to hear the thoughts of animals, our comfortable reality would shatter into a billion loud voices. We're talking about a world where every walk in the park becomes a sensory overload of pure instinct. Scientists would have to redefine the cognitive frontier as we realize that animals possess a complex and terrifying internal life. It is deeply unsettling to think about how our quiet nature walks would turn into a chaotic broadcast of secrets. To understand the true weight of this mental connection, we must look at the dark and loud details of nature. The first major shift would be the absolute collapse of the global meat and dairy industry as we currently know it. It is one thing to see a cow in a field, but it is another to hear it mourning its calf. We would be forced to listen to the existential terror of millions of creatures waiting in line for their death. No person could walk through a grocery store without hearing the psychic echoes of the pain trapped in the packaging. This would lead to a massive global movement toward veganism that would happen almost overnight due to pure human guilt. Our entire food system would be treated like a historical atrocity that we can no longer ignore or justify to ourselves. Your dinner table would become a silent place of reflection as we struggle to find a new way to survive. Your relationship with your best friend at home would also undergo a massive and potentially very awkward psychological transformation. You might think your dog loves you unconditionally, but you would finally hear its constant, obsessive demands for food and attention. You would have to listen to your cat's cold and calculated judgments of your every single move and life choice. The cute head tilt would be replaced by the reality of their boredom and their strange, animalistic fixations on the wall. Privacy in your own home would vanish because your pets would be the ultimate witnesses to your most private moments. They would become the silent judges of your life, offering a constant stream of consciousness that you can never turn off. Every good boy would be met with a mental reply that might be much more selfish than you ever imagined. The field of law and animal rights would explode into a legal nightmare that would take decades to fully resolve. If a bird can think and communicate its desire for freedom, is it still legal to keep it in a cage? We would see interspecies trials where animals testify as witnesses to crimes they happen to see in the quiet woods. The concept of non-human personhood would become the most important political debate in the history of our entire human species. Governments would have to draft a Bill of Rights for every creature from the majestic whale to the common garden snail. You could be sued by your own goldfish for negligence or by a squirrel for destroying its ancestral nesting tree. Our courts would be filled with the chatter of a million species demanding a seat at the table of justice. Modern cities would become almost uninhabitable for people who are sensitive to the mental noise of the local urban wildlife. Imagine walking down a street and hearing the frantic, starving thoughts of thousands of rats living right beneath your feet. You would hear the desperate search for trash and the violent social hierarchies of the pigeons nesting on every single rooftop. The sheer volume of search, eat, mate, repeating in your head would lead to a new kind of mental exhaustion. We would see the rise of psychic insulation and architecture to block out the overwhelming roar of the animal kingdom. People would pay thousands of dollars just to live in a room that is truly and completely silent from nature. The concrete jungle would feel a lot more like a real jungle when you can hear the hunger in every creature around you. In the deep oceans, we would discover that whales and dolphins are the true philosophers of the vast and blue sea. Their thoughts would not be about simple survival, but about ancient songs and the history of the currents and the tides. We would realize that we have been sharing the planet with brilliant minds that think in ways we cannot understand. Hearing the great song of the deep would make our human problems feel small and incredibly insignificant in the grand scale of existence. The ocean would no longer be a resource to be mined, but a sacred temple of ancient and wise beings. We would feel like intruders in a world that has been talking behind our backs for millions of years. This discovery would humble our species and force us to realize that we are not the only main characters on this planet. But there is a darker side to this power, because not all animal thoughts would be peaceful or easy to process. You would hear the predatory intent of a spider waiting in the corner of your bedroom to kill its prey. You would feel the cold, alien hunger of insects that see you as nothing more than a giant obstacle or source of danger. The circle of life would no longer be a beautiful concept, but a loud and violent reality that never stops. This would create a deep sense of paranoia as we realize just how many things are constantly watching and hunting. We might start to hate the natural world as we realize it is built on a foundation of survival and death. The beauty of a garden would be ruined by the silent screams of the insects being eaten by others. Ultimately, the ability to hear animal thoughts would destroy the wall of otherness that allows us to feel superior and separate. We would be forced to realize that every living thing is a main character in its own complex and meaningful life. The loneliness of being the only smart species would vanish, replaced by a crowded and very talkative global community. We would have to learn to share the earth in a way that respects the voices of all living creatures. It would be a world of incredible empathy and deep, crushing responsibility that we might not be ready for. You would never be alone again, for better or for worse, in this loud and living world of constant awareness. Being human would mean being one voice among trillions, all trying to be heard in the grand and cosmic conversation. So, the next time you see a stray dog or a bird on a wire, remember their secret. They are not just background actors in your movie, but heroes of their own intense and dramatic life and story. If you could hear them, your whole world would change, but maybe that is exactly what our species truly needs. We need to listen to the earth before it is too late for us and for the animals too. The silence of nature is a gift that we often take for granted in our busy and loud modern world. Treasure the quiet while you still have it, because the world is much louder than you could ever possibly imagine. Your story is part of a much larger song that has been playing since the beginning of all time.